You don't have to be a Christian for God to, number one, listen to your prayers, and number two, answer your prayers. Welcome back. My name is Jorge Coxach, and this is Love Serve Connect, dedicated to helping people have a better understanding of the Bible so that they can connect with God. Today, I want to talk to you about prayer and specifically about a prayer of a person who wasn't a Christian and yet God heard him. Sometimes I've met people where they feel like they're so far gone that God does not want anything to do with them. They, number one, believe that God doesn't listen to them, that he wouldn't hear them because they are so bad. And number two, they feel like they are so incredibly horrible people that God has no interest in them. However, that's absolutely not the case. It's the furthest thing from the truth, and there is evidence in the Bible to support this idea. So follow me to the book of Luke, chapter 23, and we're going to be looking at verses 39 and all the way through 43. And this story really illustrates to us what God's perspective is towards people who pray to him who are not even Christians. Take a look. Verse 39. Then one of the criminals who were hanged blasphemed him, saying, "If you are the Christ, save yourself and us." So, a little bit of context here. Jesus has already been crucified at this point of the story. And along with him, there are two other criminals that are presented in this story. They are also being crucified. I should say that there are two other people who are being crucified who were criminals that are hanging along with Jesus on crosses of their own. And so one of these men that is hanging there is the one that speaks first. And now the next voice that we're going to hear, keep in mind, is also one of the criminals that is hanging and is dying. He's being executed by the Roman people, and he's being executed for being a criminal, right? We don't get so many details as to what they did. We assume that these people were compatriots of Barabbas, who was freed earlier because Jesus actually takes the cross that Barabbas was supposed to bear. And so these two men that were crucified next to him were considered to be allies of Barabbas. So we know that Barabbas was a criminal, he was a known criminal, and these men were also criminals who were going to be executed along with him. And so this is what one of them replies to the one that initially said, "If you're the real Messiah, just order yourself to come down from the cross, miracle yourself down," essentially. The other one replies in verse 40, "But the other answering rebuked him, saying, 'Do you not even fear God, seeing you are under the same condemnation? And we indeed justly, for we receive the due reward of our deeds. But this man has done nothing wrong.'" So this man is recognizing he is a criminal. And here's the kicker, he deserves to pay. He says, "This is the reward for the life that we have chosen." And the Bible's very clear about that, right? Because the wages of sin are death. So this man was not a good man. By any measure of the imagination, he was a criminal. He was being executed, and he himself acknowledges that he is dying and that he deserves to pay for his crimes. And so he's rebuking the other guy. And this is the context of the person. Is a person that is so bad that is a criminal. He's considered a criminal by his peers. He is called a criminal in the Bible, and he himself acknowledges that he's a criminal who deserves the death penalty that he is now receiving. So this guy, by every vantage that we can look at, is a person who is far from God, right? He is not a Christian. He would not be considered a church guy. He would not be considered a church goer. So that is the context, and that is the who that Jesus is now going to respond to. This is Jesus's answer in verse 42. Then he said to Jesus, or rather their conversation, then he said to Jesus, "Lord, remember me when you come into your kingdom." And Jesus replies, Jesus said to him, Assuredly, I say to you, today you will be with me in paradise. So, what are we looking at here? First of all, we're seeing that this criminal acknowledging his sin is now having a conversation with Jesus. The initial conversation that he's having, this prayer that he is lifting to God, is not only being answered by Jesus, but Jesus is speaking to him in a compassionate and in a grace filled way. And so the first thing that you need to understand about this text that is us for us to understand is that you don't have to be a Christian for God to hear your prayer and for God to to reply to your prayer, to answer your prayer. You don't have to have it all together for God to reply, to answer, to have a conversation with you if you reach out to him in prayer. All you have to do is reach out. That is one of the points here that the story illustrates, because and the other point is really that God answers his prayer, because he doesn't just hear him, he also replies to him, and he replies to him in a positive way. It doesn't matter how far you've gone, it doesn't matter how bad you think you are. You may think that you're worse than you are. In fact, this text clearly illustrates what the book of Romans tells us later on, which is that Jesus's death on our behalf was for us, not when we had it all together, but when we were yet sinners. And we see that reflected in the prayer of this man hanging on the cross, because he is dying for being a sinner, for being a criminal. And Jesus didn't say, okay, get your life together and then come talk to me. Get it all right and then talk to me. Get your do your Hail Marys and Jesuses and do all the stuff, right? He didn't say all of that. Instead, he said, I say to you this day that you will be with me in paradise. So that's the point of the story today. And I really want to emphasize that message, and I hope it came across. But you don't have to be a Christian for God to answer your prayer. You don't have to be a Christian for you to reach out to God. If you've been a Christian and you've separated from God and you feel distant from him and you feel like you're so bad that God would reply, there's a story in the Bible here that illustrates the opposite. God wants to hear from you. He wants to speak to you. He wants to connect with you, and he wants to answer you. And not just that, he wants you with him in paradise. Make sure to like and subscribe if you are interested in connecting with God in a deeper way every single day as we come with these devotionals. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.